Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Adaptive Cards Developer Community Call, the March 2020 edition. I appreciate, despite all the things going on in the world right now, that you decided to spend some time with us. We're excited to have you. We've got some stuff to share. I'm Matt Heidinger. I'll be your host today. And we meet every month. Hopefully, I'm actually kind of curious. I keep forgetting to add to the survey. Where did people find this call? So we're excited you found us. At some point, I'm going to find out where everyone's coming from. And if this is your first or last time, we'll have a survey at the end, but I'll get to that. So the agenda today is going to be a quick look and an update of our roadmap. We've made some changes. We've got some positive, some things that were kind of wishy-washy have been moved around a little bit. So I'll do a quick update on that. And the bulk of the call will be a kind of interactive demo. If you were around last month, you would have seen a project that we announced a preview of. It's a proof of concept exploring this concept of an active management portal. So where you can log in, manage your cards, use them from an app via an API, and just a very user-friendly way of managing the various cards and card templates that your organization might need. So we're going to hand that off. The group that's been working on that will spend the time sharing that. And that'll hopefully be, I'm just going to kind of cue this up. The hope is that this will be a little bit more interactive than maybe some of our other ones. We always look for a little interactivity, but this one, we've got the PM, we've got some of the devs, and we've got a lot of folks that can answer some questions. They've still got some time left before the project is officially at the end of the allotted time window we had. So it'd be great if we can learn from you, ask questions, figure out if that makes sense or where we should spend the rest of our time, and just peek below the hood and see how it works. And if you have any curiosity around it, that'd be the time to do that. So it'll be slightly interactive after they give a quick demo. So with that, let's get into the start of it. So we've had this feature portal around. I talk about it every month. If you're here every month, you're possibly sick of me talking about it. But you can go to aka.ms/AC features, or on the previous one, we have AC roadmap. But that is going to kick you off to a portal that we have, which is kind of a user-friendly view of a high-level view of what's on top of our mind and what we're hoping to release in a given quarter. So a couple quick updates along the way. So templating has been rolled out in more places. We released the public preview of the Adaptive Card Template service, and in the last month, not we, but the Power Automate team released action support in their Power Automate connector. So you can now use a connector that sends a card into Teams, collects input from the user, then you can click the button in Teams, and it basically kicks off the flow to continue on based on what the user had typed in. So you can really create these really powerful end-to-end experiences, creating a card, collecting data from someone in Teams, and then doing something with that data all from Power Automate without having to write any code. And I know there's a lot of jargon and a lot of what I just said. If you're not familiar with Power Automate, I definitely encourage you to check it out. It used to be called Microsoft Flow. I don't have any demos planned today, but if you look at any previous community calls, in fact, at the end, Thomas, who is our familiar friend on this call, kind of walked us through some of the cool Power Automate additions. So if you are at least curious with that product or using it every day, there's been 2 cool additions specifically for adaptive cards that you can learn all about from last month's call. So that's what's happened as far as what's launched. We've got some updates around templating. We've been talking about templating for a long time. I will do a quick recap of templating today. The biggest news here is it's been in preview. It's been in preview for a while because templating, and let me actually just take a quick lap around what what the heck is templating, just so everyone's on the same page. Zone out for a few minutes if you're very familiar. But a quick way to learn about what it is go to adaptivecards.io. You can click on our samples, which we've had since the dawn of adaptive cards, and there is a toggle switch here where you can turn on adaptive card templating. And what changes is instead of a single card payload, which we used to have, where all the content, this profile image, then my name, the date it was created, with it's all baked right into the card. So it's not very easy to create a dynamic card that can be later populated with data. That's currently what we're calling adaptive card templating. And what changes when I turn this toggle on is instead of one giant text box or JSON box, we get two. We basically separate the two concepts. So what changed here is the data from the card, and it's any data you want. You could have described this data yourself, you could have gotten it from another service, but here's basically the dynamically replaceable part of this card. So in this case, I'm saying there's a title, there's a description, there's a creator and the creator's name and their profile image, and then it gets used in the card via these binding expressions where you can see these curly braces. So actually, let me zoom in just a little bit. So it's a separation of the static part of the card and the dynamically replaceable card. What this means is now that you have a so-called template, you can now bind this with data later on at runtime and reuse it and reuse this same card without having to rebuild the whole thing. All you have to do is send the updated data. So that's templating. It's existed for a little while now. It has been in preview, as we call out everywhere. We finally have a pretty good plan on how we can take it out of preview. The main thing that we were waiting on, for example, if I go to this stock card, this data came from another service. IEX Trading offers financial data. I don't have any ability to control this data. So when there's something like open time, well, this is a millisecond offset number. Clearly, I need to format this number in a human readable way. I need some ability to take this number, parse it into a date, and then display it as you expect here. Well, this is Friday, May 3rd, 2019. There's a lot of other examples like this. For example, the latest price, this is a number, 128.9. That's a valid number. But when you present currency to humans, you typically use 2 decimal places. So what you would expect to see here is 128.90. So you realize you need some ability usually to format or shape or somehow coerce the data in certain ways. And so we've had limited support for that. You can call functions. This is very similar to what you might do in Excel. We wrote a function called parse date from epoch, and then we have some kind of cascading ways of coalescing these functions to do certain things. In some cases, you can see some of these expressions. For example, if the stock is trading up, then I want the color to be the color good in adaptive cards. Otherwise, I want it to be color attention. And if the text is up or the stock is up, I want the up arrow to be placed here versus the down arrow. And here you can see there's some format calls here. So there's some expressions part of it. That's the term we're using. And that string is an expression. And that's been the last piece. We knew we didn't want to really invent a new expression language. We did some research. And I just want to give a quick update because in subsequent calls, we'll really dive into this. But the high level news is we found another team in Microsoft who was doing very similar things. We have a product in the works that is going to basically join the adaptive family that will solve and be this reusable expression layer that's going to solve a lot of things. We'll have all these if conditions you see. We'll have some couple hundred of built-in functions that you might expect, like to upper, to lower, string manipulation, all the things you would kind of expect, so that you can write these reusable templates, put enough power in them, bind them to data, and the template itself is definitely increasing in its potency. So the good news there, taking it back to the portal, is that we have a good roadmap there. I'll share more details in the coming months, but we're feeling pretty good that we can land this in Q2. So templating will have built-in function and expression support. The Power Automate connector for the service, I did a preview of that a couple years ago or a couple months ago, and it's still in. It still hasn't been released. There's some compliance stuff that has to be done, but this is basically a way of connecting to the template service. The designer with version selector support, we get a lot of comments on this in random places. We're just doing kind of final bug bashing and testing on that, so that should be out pretty quickly. A couple other templating things about accessing host properties from within the template. The template service automatically generating a card from JSON schema. I'm going a little quickly just to summarize some quick updates. If you are curious on all these, we've done deep dives on most of these things in previous community calls. So if you should just do a quick search for our blog posts along the months. If you're curious about any of these, the blog post will cover the gist. And then if you really want to dive in, click on the call. All of these community calls are on YouTube as well. The only update, I said there was a little bit of possibly down news. The Xamarin and Xamarin Forms SDKs, we did a lot of prototyping, trying to find a realistic way that we can release support for these without overburdening our test matrix. We had a plan. We did the right thing and reevaluated the plan before we got too far, and we're still making progress on it. But I wanted to call out that if you were depending on this, we might be a little bit later than we thought. So if you have thoughts on Xamarin, there will be a survey at the end of this call with just an open-ended box, and you can give us feedback there if that, if that's really like impacting your plans. The final piece I'll say on this tool is really cool, especially if you're not a developer full-time and you don't have GitHub. Any one of these you can click on. All you have to give us is, well, that's some of the background stuff because I'm logged in. If you're anonymous looking at this, all these numbers are people basically telling us that they needed this. This is your opportunity to tell us what we should be focusing on. All you need is an email address. You don't have to create an account. It's incredibly low friction. And just tell us, is this nice to have, critical? You can see our highest requested item is input validation and just evolving the story of inputs and data collection. It is something we're actively working on. A couple months ago, we reviewed the plan with that. So if you're curious, but this is your opportunity to take a look at the things coming together and let us know if we're focusing on the right things or not. So that is a look at the roadmap. I did a quick lap around templating. Let's take 3 more minutes and then hand it over to the folks working on the meat of the management portal. So I'll summarize with this. Fundamentally, the life cycle of an adaptive card today is we have a set of tools. It centers around the adaptive card JSON. We have a set of tools from the card designer, the template service, what you're about to see, which is basically a private version of the template service. We've got some Power Automate options. But all of these tools, including the new integrated designer in Power Automate, they're all helping you build the adaptive card JSON. That then lands on an app like Teams or Outlook or your own apps, and then lands on a platform and gets rendered natively to look like that app. That's basically the life cycle. So the interns, which we're going to see who've been building this project, have been really focusing on this left half of the story, finding new ways to help teams of developers and designers collaborate on building that JSON, sharing the JSON, just basically a better story, which we've effectively left kind of to each developer to figure out what works best for them. So this is an attempt at really thinking about this problem space with the goal of helping organizations become more efficient designing and then collaborating on adaptive cards. It is an intern project here at Microsoft. We've got 8 fantastic interns up in Vancouver, BC, working on it. We've got a PM, 6 devs, and a designer. And with all that, I'm going to hand it over to them to give us a quick update, dive into some of the code, and I'll leave it up to them to tee up if you folks have questions, if they want questions from you, and we'll make this part a little more interactive. So with that, whoever wants to share, please take it away.
Okay, thanks, Matt, for introducing us. Hi, everybody. My name is Seva, and I'm one of the interns here in Vancouver who is working on this project. And we are working on the management system for adaptive cards, where you can create, edit, and share the templates. It comes in 2 pieces. It comes with the web portal, as you can see on my screen right now, and it also comes with the API. So you can fetch the templates in your applications that you or your friends or your coworkers have created and published on the website. So you don't need to copy paste the JSON anymore. You just call the API and it will give you the template. Let's have a look at the website we have made so far. So when you log into the website, that's what you're going to see. This is the portal. So on the left-hand side, we can see a little navigation bar as some pages you can browse around. This is the dashboard we see. You can also create a new template, see all the templates that are published on the website right now. You can see the drafts. Drafts are the templates that you are currently working on, but you haven't decided to publish it yet. So it's still work in progress. Published would be the templates that are already published by you and by the organization. So you can see all the published templates and the work that people shared. And we also have implemented some method to search and navigate through the templates using tags. I will dive into it a little bit later. In the middle of the screen, we can see two portions. It's recently edited and recently viewed templates. So here we can see the templates that you've recently edited. They might be yours, they might be some other published templates that you have permissions to edit. And this is the recently viewed table. It's just navigation bar to help you to see which templates you have viewed recently. Name and the owner is not implemented yet, so just heads up. That's why it's on title and the username. Let's go through the workflow, how we would create and publish and share the template. So I would click New Template first, and here we go into the designer that Matt's team has already implemented. Probably you're familiar with this. And I will copy paste the pre-made card, so it doesn't look as the default card we're looking at right now. So this is the card that displays a GitHub issue. We'll try to create it, publish it, and post it to the Teams channel using Flow a little bit later. So after we've created the template, we can save it. And as you can see, it appeared in the recently edited on the dashboard. So you can click on it and it will open the preview page of the template. In the middle of the screen, you can see the preview of the template being rendered on our screens. And on the right-hand side, you can see a little bit of information about the template. So every template can have multiple versions. Currently, this is version number 1.0 because we've just created it. We've decided to implement some versioning to allow people to make changes to the templates if they want to and not break somebody else's code who is already using previous version. So let's say you've created version number 1.0 and some of the developers or your coworkers or friends are using this version of this template to display UI in their application. But then you suddenly decide that, oh, I want to change the design a little bit. So then you can click Edit in the designer, add your changes, and new version will pop up. We'll try it later. And by this, you won't be breaking the production or the existing code that is using your template already.
And Seva, can I add something really quickly?
Sorry. Yeah.
So just to make sure everyone is aware of the flow that he just mentioned, is the working thought here is that this is an organization that has two different groups. One creating the card, maybe it's a designer, that's their role. They're creating the card and saving it here in this user-friendly experience. But later on, someone else is going to consume that template and then fill it with the data. That's when we talked about the templating. In this case, you're seeing static data into it. If you're going to demo that later, I apologize. I just cut that off. But the theory here is that you would create a template without the static data. So this issue where it says spelling error and README, that would be provided later at runtime. There's a REST API powering this. So some developer somewhere would fetch this template, version 1.0, version 1.1, pass in the data, and then send it to the app.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So each version of the template can be in several states. It can be in draft, live, as we can see later, and deprecated. So when you publish the version of the template, it's going to be live. We'll see how it works later. This is a little date when the template was created. And here we have 4, let's say, buttons. You can edit the template in the designer. You can delete it. You can share it it will give a shareable link. I'll demonstrate it later, and you can publish it. Here we can see the owner of the template. There's going to be a little picture and the name, and the usage. So usage will display some statistics about your template and how many people have used it and requested it using the API. So if you're wondering if someone is using your template or how many people are doing this, you can see it here. We also have a little feature. It's called the tags I've mentioned earlier. You can add a tag. So it's the tag GitHub to this template.
Seva, excuse me, can I just ask you first one question?
Sure.
Where is this data stored? Is it going to be in CDS or is it going to be an dedicated Azure SQL database? This is just going to be like a shared, like an SaaS service that is going to be hosted somewhere and licensed to the tenant.
Yes, so this project is open source as well as adaptive cards. We're trying to build it as an NPM package, so you can install our entire service and host it on your local machine or your tenant. And you will get all the UI and all the backend as well. And the beauty of it that all the components that you require for authentication and the storage, meaning the database, are pluggable. So for example, currently we're using Azure Active Directory to authenticate when we log in into the portal. And for storage, we're using MongoDB. But when you will download our package, you won't have to do that. We made the interfaces pluggable. So you can plug your own authentication provider as well as your storage. So you will be able to use it with SQL or with NoSQL or with any popular database. We don't know what we're going to implement exactly yet. But the idea is that database and authentication is going to be pluggable as you want.
Yeah, and just to add, we won't be doing, for the time being, we won't be offering a SaaS offering or hosting it or storing anyone's data. This is, here's the code, you host it, you manage your own data for now.
Yep. Tags feature is a little buggy. I'm trying to add a tag. So here we got a tag. You can attach a tag to the template. So when you search or categorize your templates, you can group it by tags. A little lower, we see a little table that's called recent releases. It's a little table that displays the versions of this template that's already made. So currently we only have version 1.0 and it's in the draft. So what I would like to do right now, I would like to publish the template and then I will share it with Jessica, our PM, and she will try to send this template using our API to the Microsoft Teams. So I'll click publish. Now it's published and the version 1 is live. And now I can click share. So here you're provided the link, like in Google Docs, for example, when you want to share your document, you copy the link and you click share. Now the template is shared. So if I follow the link, has a little bug in here. This is what it would look like. And this is the preview page. When you follow the shared link, you can see the template and the JSON that it comes with. You cannot edit anything or browse it, and it's going to be available to everyone, whether you are authenticated or not. So right now I'm going to hand this link to Jess. So she will send it to the Microsoft Teams through the flow. So the link to Jess. Give me 1 second. Okay. And I will stop presenting and Jess, you can take over.
Now I got the link from Seva. So if I click it, I can also see this preview of the card and the JSON template. Now, what I'm thinking is I wanted to make this GitHub issue bot that renders this GitHub issue card on Teams channel. So I'm going to use Power Automate to make a flow and use ACMS API to get the card. We pre-made the flow yesterday. So if I go to this flow, basically what it does is using ACMS API to get the card and render it on the Teams channel. So I'm going to manually trigger it for now.
The cursors are amazing.
Oh, yeah. It's Hagrid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all I need to do is put template ID and template version. So if I check the Seva's link, this is the template ID, and then he's using version 1.2. So I'm going to put this template ID here and then version 1.2 here and run the flow. Cool. If I going back to the Teams channel, there you go. You can see the GitHub card is rendered by Flow. From this demo, I wanted to point out a couple benefits of using ACMS in this scenario. Let's say Seva wants to update his design of card. With ACMS, the updating process is really easy and simple. Seva, do you want to edit it?
So here I'm back to the template preview page, and here we have a little button, Edit in the Designer. So if I click it, it's going to take me to the designer with the template. So let me change the name. I'll change it to Batman here. I can add something else. I can delete this line. Okay, I can just delete this block. Okay, so, and then I will save the template and I'll finish. So let's come back to the Batman. So now we can see this is Batman, the new template. And I can also publish this version. I can also share this. Hopefully it will work. Let's give it a try. Nope, it doesn't do it. So there's something wrong with the share button right now, but as you would imagine, you just click share you click share, and then it creates a new shared link for that version. And here we can see all the versions that have been added to this template. So every time you click edit in the designer and you save it again, it will create a new version. And it's going to be in the draft by default, but you can publish it and then share with other people so they can use it. Okay, I think that's all from me for today.
May I just ask one thing?
Yeah.
About the share functionality. So, did I get you right that I have to share every new version, or is that just can I share a whole card with all versions? Do I really have to share every single version again?
Currently, yes, the URL is tied in with the specific version. So whenever you click the share button, you can see at the end of this link, you can see the version here, but the ID is the same. So right now it's version specific URL.
And that means even if I update the version, well, my flow is still always using the same version. So even in my flow, there's no way to say always take the latest version.
Yes, there is a way to take the latest version. So now that Seva updated it, if I wanted to use the updated version, there's a two-way to do it. So first way is to, when I'm making the flow, I can specify the specific version here. Like let's say if I set 1.2, it will always get the 1.2. But if you want to get the latest version always, just leave it the version parameter empty, then it will always get the latest version.
And presumably that's not implemented just yet in this version.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, that is the plan. Yeah.
Yes. If you're using our API service on your code directly, then if you don't want to get the specific version, just empty the second parameter, which is the version part, then it will get the latest version too.
So Jess, just to make sure I understand what you're showing here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically just connecting the front end that Seva was showing. When he clicks save, that's taking the template as he designed it, saving it in a database, and it's also exposing it via that REST API.
Right.
And then you're just connecting to that REST API from here. Okay, yeah, you're just basically building up the query string right there. So you're just showing how we would consume it from Power Automate. So people could use presumably other things like just custom backend code to basically hit that endpoint and get the latest template.
Yeah. Yesterday, I was making a chatbot using Microsoft Composer that requires me to write a code. Like I was using JavaScript. If I wanted to use adapted cards, then yeah, I'll write a code. I'll get the API call and then get the response and bind it with my data.
Cool.
Oh, just to add on to the managing multiple versions, we're working on a feature right now where you'll be able to do like batch operations on multiple versions. So if you go back to like that template info page on the right-hand side, there's like a little list of the versions and there's a little manage button. If you click that, then there will basically be like a list of checkboxes. And then, yeah, so if you go down to the recent releases part, there's like a little manage button. It's grayed out for now because it's not implemented yet. But then once you click that, you'll get that list of versions, and then you check multiple versions, then you can choose like publish all of them or unpublish all of them.
Cool. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, so we can move on to the next part. Grace will walk through our project architecture and then explain a little bit more about the pluggable interface.
This is our architecture for our project. I'm going to start at the very bottom with the database. So this actually stores the templates that we make and the metadata about the templates. So the owner, the state that the template is in, whether it's in draft, it's live, or it's deprecated, and some additional information like version. As Seva mentioned before, this is pluggable. So right now we've implemented this as using MongoDB, but in the future you might be able to use something like a SQL server. So above that we have our backend library, the Adaptive Cards Templating Service. This is an NPM package, and this includes a storage provider layer and an auth provider layer. So focusing on the storage provider layer first, it's basically a database adapter. So it's what connects the backend library's idea of the template models and how they're structured to how it's actually stored in the database. Right now we have this implemented for MongoDB. We have a MongoDB adapter, and in the future we'll be able to add other adapters that can support different databases. Next we have the authentication provider layer. So similar to the storage provider adapter, we have an auth provider adapter. Right now we have this implemented for Azure Active Directory, but in the future we'll be able to add more adapters to support other auth providers such as Google authentication, so that you'll be able to select which storage provider and which auth provider you want to use when you instantiate the package. In this backend library, it's also basically the data layer. It's where all of the heavy lifting is done. So getting all your templates, keeping track of the recently viewed, recently edited templates, and keeping hit usage on the templates that are published, and keeping track of who has permissions to view which templates. So this backend library also has routers that redirect to specific functions that do this heavy lifting. Because of this, JavaScript developers or TypeScript developers can also directly install this NPM package to get all this backend functionality as well, and they'll be able to add in their own storage provider and auth provider here. Above that, we have our Node.js web server. This is basically where we specify our endpoints, and then we hand it off to the NPM package to do the actual routing and to do the heavy lifting and to connect to the database and do authentication. And so another layer above that, we have our client SDKs. These are basically the SDKs that make it easier to do HTTP requests to our web server. So they're auto-generated by Swagger, and currently we have a JavaScript client SDK for our own front-end app that Seva demoed earlier, and a C# one. If you were trying to develop an app to access this template service, but you weren't using JavaScript or TypeScript and you couldn't directly install the NPM package, you would be able to install the client SDK instead, and then serve up your own or run your own web server, and then use a client SDK to easily access the service through your web server, or through the client SDK to the web server. And then above that, we are using our JavaScript client SDK right now to serve up our backend functionalities to our React front end for the admin portal, which is the portal that Seva demonstrated earlier. And then this, well, currently it's connected to Azure Active Directory to do the actual authentication in the front end when you log in. And that's an overview of our entire architecture right now.
Awesome. Jess, did you guys have more you wanted to show? Thanks everyone for especially what you just showed there. We've got some questions queued up we can take to, or did you want to keep, did you have other stuff to share?
No, that's all we have for today.
All right, fantastic. Yeah. Why don't we take a look at some of these questions that have piled up. Thanks everyone, by the way, for engaging in the questions. We'll go back through the chat. This is effectively, we're entering the Q&A portion of the evening. So feel free, we'll go through these, and then as we get into it, we'll people can feel free to unmute and ask some questions, but we'll start by just going down. So I'll start and tee them off and kick it over to you fine folks when if the questions are about the project. So, all right, going back, some waves, good, very nice. Power Automate, adaptive cards, good. The expression layer, people seem excited about. Roadmap page. So the first question, I understand I may not be the first to ask this. Sorry, I haven't been in the know with your calls and blogs, but need to ask when, if, how Power Apps will have adaptive card rendering. Okay. I don't have an update on Power Apps. It's come up a couple times. I need to find the right people to reach out to. I don't have an update there. If you want to send me an email, though, that's the thing. Let me share this really quickly. I'll reshare my screen. And my email, I'll put it in the chat, or Dana, because my computer's acting slow, if you want to just put it in there. But it's matt.heidinger@microsoft.com. And you can let me know what you need from Power Apps and the rendering. And I'd love to kick off a conversation to see what we can do there. But as of now, I'm not aware of any current plans.
And Matt, I can probably connect you with some people on the Power Apps team too, and we can get through that.
Dana, the more I realize there is nothing you can't do for us.
And we do have a Power Apps community call that comes up, so we can maybe, it's usually the third Wednesday of the month, but this month it happens to be the fourth Wednesday, so it's on the 25th this month. I can send you guys a link to that, but then Matt and the Power Apps team can work on this, and we can bring some information back to this call in particular as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So is there an option, this is for Jess and you folks, is there an option to save a comment in relation with the version change? I think this is when you click save. I saw when you're sharing, I think when you clicked publish, there is a way to put optional notes. Is that the same with save, or is it only at publish time?
This is our designer's design for our admin portal. Currently, we don't have an option to leave a comment on when you're publishing it. That comments for when you want to notify someone through email, that comments will be in that email, but it won't be saved on the admin portal.
Okay, so I think the answer there to Carnegie is you can add a comment at publish time. Was that right? But not at like saving individual drafts.
Yes. So if you click the manage button that Grace mentioned before, this model will pop up. Currently, there's no like comments associated with the version.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. So something to consider. While you're here in the design, the next question is there an icon or an ability to indicate the host app in this view? And I think one of our screens you've got shows the host app dropdown. So you will be able to preview the template in different host apps. Yeah.
Yes, right up here.
And so that's in the, it's not implemented yet, but that is something that's on your roadmap, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And by the way, if I'm not answering the questions properly, please just follow up. I'll just kind of go through them really quickly, but we're here to make sure you get your question answered. So Tim asks, what happens when you delete a template with frequent usage? Will there be a warning or delete disabled for live templates?
Yeah, currently, if you delete the live template, the warning sign should pop up on the admin portal. But right now for our MLP, there's no warning sign to the people who are using the API. They'll get the 404 error when they run the API, and then on their website, they'll get the 404 error.
And to provide context between MLP, so I sort of glossed over this, but Jessica, Seva, Grace, all the folks that you saw today, again, they're interns here for 16 weeks, and they've basically teased this project into MVP, so a minimum viable product, which is effectively what you're seeing now, and they've just started working on their MLP, which is the minimum lovable product. And so some of these things are coming in. We're trying to prioritize the highest hittest things because I think they're here through like mid-April. We've got another 4 or some weeks.
We have like 4 more weeks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question, I might need some more context. So SharePoint list JSON in SharePoint web parts was the full question. SharePoint's come up. I think Thomas asked on one of the very first calls that I met him about a SharePoint web part, and we don't currently have any turnkey end-to-end solution for rendering cards in SharePoint web parts. We do provide SDKs that would make it doable. If you do have some development expertise and knew how to install the SDK and could make that integration, you could absolutely render an adaptive card in SharePoint. But as of now, we don't have any out-of-the-box way of doing it, unfortunately. If that didn't answer your question, please feel free to add more. And there's definitely a SharePoint community call as well that I think we link to at the end. We have a link of all the other calls. So it might be something worth bringing up to them too. Maybe someone has worked on this. Maybe someone's developed it. I'm not a SharePoint expert. I don't know that anyone on our team is. But if there was a SharePoint expert available to do it, we could definitely help out and provide guidance because it should be definitely doable. I think someone was trying to help with the sharing URL, the 1.1 instead of 1.0 in the URL, I think, during the bug. So appreciate the help.
We did try 5 times and it always worked. And now it doesn't work.
Some love for Jessica's Harry Potter icons. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's Chrome extension.
And cool, some comments that they liked it. So could there be a card designed and support the load of HTML and support in Teams? I think this question is, Pallav, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this question is there any ability to put HTML chunks of HTML within the card via either loaded up via URL or not? And the current answer is no. It's not on our roadmap as of now. It'd be really tricky to support that if I'm understanding your question properly, mainly because 2 of the guarantees that we offer with adaptive cards is that they always render natively and that they're always styled as the host app. So these host apps like Teams, they get the performance benefit, and they also know that they can basically open up their product to the world to take content from the world, but it's somewhat constrained and sandboxed so that they know that they're not really risking a poor user experience or potential security flaws or anything. So the concept of injecting custom HTML within the card is a little bit tricky to solve. And we're just not there. It's not currently part of our priorities. Specifically for actionable messages, any chance for the AM debugger on Outlook mobile? I'm not familiar with this, but I think David Clow was on the call. I don't know if he still is. Do you know anything about that question if you're on the call?
I am on the call, but sorry, what's the question?
So specifically for actionable messages, is there any chance to support the AM debugger on Outlook mobile?
to have a version of the AM debugger on Outlook Mobile. So the AM debugger extension. That's a good question. I actually thought it already worked there. I can ping the team about that, see if they would be willing to do the work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. And that one got a heart reaction as well. So at least 2 people on our call would be interested in that. So Thomas adds the same with Power Virtual Agents. I assume this was a comment regarding something they were demoing. Integration with AC is on the roadmap and should be somewhere in May. Thomas, let me know if that was just helping along with what was on the screen at the time. Then Dana added a link to our survey, which gets me to, yeah, please do complete this survey. It means the world to us to understand if these things are useful to you. This particular survey is less about the community calls and more about the adaptive card management service. Jessica and the team over there put it together. We mentioned we've got them for about another month. Let's make it a fantastic month and make sure they're delivering the value that you need. So please let us know if we're on the right direction with this, if we should keep investing in it after the internship ends. I do want to reiterate, this is something we aspire to release, and we will release the source code. It is open source. I didn't call that out. I don't know if, Jess, I don't know if you're easily able to put a link in while I'm rambling here. You can follow along in the project. I don't know if it's quite at a state, I don't want to speak for the team, but I don't know if it's quite at a state where it's easy to get started and self-host. But as you can see from the demo, it's come a long way since last month. So hopefully by next month's community call, it'll be at a state where you could install it and start using it and really start getting a feel for some of the offering. And then our hope is that long-term we can keep this project going after the internship ends and deliver ultimate value for you folks. Stacy adds, okay, there's some thanks. Yep, okay. I've used this with SharePoint framework to develop a web part. Okay, awesome. If I'm understanding that you basically did add support for adaptive cards in SharePoint, if there's any way you could share that with me or the team, we get this question every so often. I don't know if it's in any state like that. If you just share source code again, I don't really know how SharePoint works and what the package model is. But if that's in any kind of state that we could share it with our community, I think that would be a huge benefit. And absolutely, you'd get 100% credit where that credit is due. But I think it'd be great to filter that around if you have indeed done such a thing. Tim added some docs. Jessica added some links. And awesome. Some other feedback that, yeah, people really want to see cards in SharePoint. Any other questions, please add them. You are free to unmute. I will quickly say, please finish this. Please complete the survey. It's incredibly short. I think it was like 5 questions. Resources to catch up on things. We did an Ignite session about 6 months ago. Definitely go to that AC features URL to let us know what features you need. That was that portal from the beginning. Get started with adaptive card templating. We've got a somewhat updated roadmap through 2020. There are plenty of Microsoft 365 developer community calls that, while we're super happy you joined the adaptive cards one, there's plenty going on in this ecosystem, and there's plenty of opportunity for all of us with the help of Dana to really make sure we're cross-connecting all these things and really, really delivering some great end-to-end experiences. The recording of this will be available on YouTube at the Microsoft 365 Developer YouTube channel. You can see there. Please subscribe. I hear that all the time when I'm watching YouTube. You can follow the account on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev. You can find me. I should probably put this on there. I'm at Matt Heidinger. You can find me on Twitter. The next call will be April 9th at 9 a.m. PST, same time, same place. And yeah, I think that was it. We'll go to Q&A. More Q&A. We've got 5 minutes left. How about support for Schema 1.5 on mobile? David, can you explain to me or add what is 1.5 Sweet. So Stacy and Dana are hopefully going to connect. Awesome. Any last questions? David, I didn't get the 1.3. If I could guess, unless you add more context there, Adaptive Cards 1.3 is our current upcoming release. 1.2 is our most recent release. It was just rolled out to Teams. If you're asking about Teams Mobile, they're now on the latest release. Outlook is not on 1.2. And again, I'm just kind of guessing if that's what you were getting at. I don't know that we have a roadmap yet on when Outlook would be on the latest, but we are
working on it.
What was that, David?
Outlook is working on it. It's more complicated than it probably should be, but we're gonna get there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't see anything else coming through the chat. I appreciate, again, everyone coming out to make time with us. Thank you for coming. We'll see you again in a month. Expect a call up in a little bit, and thank you very much for joining. Everyone have a good rest of your day or evening. Bye.
Thank you, Matt.